Hey everyone, happy Pride. Welcome to Be Our Guest, our weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Janki, Artistic Director of Live and in Color. We are an artist-serving organization dedicated to developing new stage works that promote and celebrate diversity. June is our month of giving. We have just 3 weeks left to win a matching gift of $10,000. And so far we've raised $3,570 and we need to raise another $6,430 in the next 3 weeks. Your gift of any amount will be doubled now through July 11th, the date of our summer garden party benefit. Please make a tax-deductible donation today to support our artists by going to liveandincolor.org right now and double your impact today. Now, grab a cocktail and start leaving your questions for our wonderful guests in the comments. Please help me welcome a fantastic actor. You may recognize him from the off-Broadway hit Ordinary Days, as well as Broadway's If Then and Hamilton, and he is also a Live in Color alum. Please welcome Marc delaCruz. Hello, my friend.
Hey.
Good to see you.
So good to see you too.
Where are you joining us from?
I am coming to you from the big island of Hawaii. I am in my birth town of Hilo.
Oh, I'm so jealous. That's so wonderful that you got to head home for a bit.
Yeah, it's been really great. We my family is all kind of trickling in. My parents live here on the Big Island. Yeah. My mom is from Hilo, this town that I'm in right now, and it's actually where I was born too. So once we all got vaccinated and everything, we decided to spend some time out here and all gather. And I'm actually in my grandparents' house right now, which was the house that I was brought home to after I was born, because I happened to my family when I was born. So there's so many memories. My grandparents are with me right now.
Hello.
They say hello.
So how did, growing up in Hilo, how did you end up falling in love with the arts? You know, you've had such an amazing career, but what was the spark? What was the beginning of it all as a kid?
Well, I actually grew up in Seattle.
Okay.
I was born here, but we moved to Seattle when I was about 4 years old, I think. My dad was in the military. He was in the Air Force, and my family moved around a lot because of his career. And eventually, shortly after I was born, we decided to settle in Seattle. And that's really where I grew up. So I went to school there. I went to high school. I went to University of Washington. And I think I was lucky because Seattle has such a great art scene. There's so much theater and art and dance and music that comes from Seattle. It's kind of a place that really nurtures the arts. And so I was lucky to have been surrounded by it growing up, a lot of culture and a lot of opportunities to be exposed to things. And my mom always took us to shows, all the shows that were touring through the city and locally produced shows like at Seattle Children's Theater and Northwest Asian American Theater. She was really adamant about taking us to see plays and things at Northwest Asian American Theater. And so I kind of grew up watching theater and was always just so enamored by the magic of it. And my sister was a performer. She did lots of performing. So I watched her growing up, but I didn't really perform myself until I went to college. College was where I kind of really dove into the performing arts.
Why did that shift happen?
I think it was kind of a convergence of like lots of things that all happened at once. The first thing was, I was a freshman and I needed some extra credits to one quarter to take. I was on a trajectory to be an international studies major, and I needed some extra credits. And my friends who were minoring in dance suggested I take a dance class. And I was completely like, I don't know how I can like walk into the University of Washington Department of Dance and like sign up for a class. Like, I have no dance training. I'd never danced in my life except for in the living room when I was a kid. So like, they said, well, but there are some, kind of like 101 classes that are open to anybody. And so I signed up for one of those as a contemporary dance class, and just completely, I always say like I fell in love with it, but it was really that I kind of reconnected with this love I had for dance and performance. And I ended up taking dance the rest of my time at UW. Every quarter, I went back to Meany Hall and took another dance class. And all of the professors there were really welcoming to me. They really, they knew I didn't have any previous training, and so they just said, we're happy to help and teach you. And I just found, I just really fell in love with it, this artistic expression through dance and the performing arts. And then other things kind of happened. Like my friends had a singing group, and he heard me singing in the car one day. It was all Filipino guys, and he was like, you want to join our singing group? So I joined them, and we were like, all Filipino boy band, and it was,
what was your boy band name? Did you have was there a name of the band?
It was called L22.
Oh wow!
and it was also Lounge 22, okay. And they named it after the dorm room where they got started, which was Lander Hall 22.
Maybe there needs to be a reunion of your boy band.
Totally needs to be a reunion. My friend has been, my friend who videoed all our performances, not like on a camera, but like actually with a video camera, has been taking all the performances and like digitizing everything and sending us clips. And it's just like, oh my gosh.
I love it. Well, it's so great. Well, when you were studying or growing up in the arts, I mean, you spoke a little bit of your teachers, but did you have any particular mentors or role models that really helped you, make the leap to the professional world, or really inspired you to keep doing it?
Yeah, I always think back to the directors, the artistic directors, the actors in Seattle, who really just opened up their arms and their doors and their theaters to me to perform with them. Particularly the Northwest Asian American Theater was the first show I auditioned for. Was a production of The Fantastics at Northwest Asian American Theater. It was an outdoor production in the Japanese Garden in Seattle.
Wow.
And it was directed by a friend of my sister's, and now a friend of mine, Manuel Kawaling. And he knew I was Deirdre's brother and asked me to audition. And so I auditioned, and he cast me, and I spent this really magical summer doing The Fantastics in a Japanese garden.
You played Matt, I assumed?
I did. I played Matt. Yeah. And it was a really awesome interpretation because it took the story and it set it in turn of the century Japan. And so it was this really lovely interpretation. And so there was actually a lot of mentors like within the Asian theater community that just said, hey, come and like perform with us. There's React Theater, and Sex in Seattle Productions, which was Sex in Seattle was a theater episodic serial that was started in Seattle, and it was founded by 4 Asian American women who wanted to create a series kind of loosely based on Sex in the City, but it was about Asian American women in Seattle. And so they invited me on board for that. And so those were really some of the early kind of mentors that I had. Kathy and David Shea are our brother and sister who are just big leaders in the theater community in Seattle. And they invited me aboard a lot of their work. And then beyond that, once I decided I really wanted to do theater and really wanted to keep kind of pursuing it, the folks at Village Theater and Fifth Avenue Theater, which are 2 sort of like big mainstay musical theaters in Seattle, they really brought me into the world and gave me a chance to cut my teeth and to learn and to teach me the things that I didn't know. And so I got a lot of opportunities to perform in a lot of different shows. So it's all because of this community of theater makers in Seattle.
Yeah, the Pacific Northwest is really extraordinary in terms of what the amount of theaters and opportunities, but also just because there's such a huge Asian population that I'm sure it was so unique, unlike a lot of the rest of the country where, there were a lot of Asian artists in one place at a time where there probably weren't a lot in the rest of the country. So, or at least on stage to be seen. So
yeah, I think the Northwest Asian American Theater was one of the handful of Asian American theaters that were formed in, I think, the early 80s. And so it's a very passionate and tight-knit community. Yeah. The theater arts folks in the arts of color, as well as folks just folks in the arts. This is a very passionate community.
So I want to cut to the Broadway. You got to appear both on Broadway and the national tour of If Then. There you are. And you were a swing. And for those people who don't know, can you explain for the people who don't know what a swing is?
Yes, I would love to. A swing is somebody who understudies usually the ensemble roles of a show. So every Broadway show has a whole team of swings that cover the male and female ensemble parts. And so that usually means that you can cover, as you know, Dev, 4 to 10 to more, 30 to 30 tracks, right?
30 parts.
Yeah, right. It can really be a lot of tracks to cover, and that's how that a lot of my career has been in swinging and understudying. It's responsible for a lot of the work that I've been able to do. And If Then, I was a swing. And so I covered all the guys in the ensemble, as well as the photo that you showed, as well as the role of David, who was originated by Jason Tam. And so I got to be a part of that.
And you ended up taking over the role, right? On the tour?
Yes. And then on the tour, I got to take over the role. So
what was it like going from covering 100 parts to just doing one track for?
It was kind of a switch to just be like, oh, I only have to know one track. I feel like there was so much more space in my brain for it. But I was also dance captaining while I was on tour. So I didn't have to know the other tracks to perform them, but I still had to know everything, to be the dance captain. But yeah, it was definitely a transition for sure, yeah. Just to know the one part.
And of course we have to talk about the Hamilton. You joined the cast in 2018 as the first Asian American Alexander Hamilton on Broadway, which was just for our community such a huge deal. There you are. I mean, those pictures are extraordinary. What has that whole experience been like, stepping into such an iconic and popular show?
Oh my gosh, it's really beyond words. It took me a long time to know that it was actually happening. I just was like, there has to be a mistake somewhere. I don't know how they're gonna call and be like, sorry, we made a mistake. I just didn't see. When I first heard the cast recording, I fell in love with the show and I knew I wanted, to be in it. And then the opportunity came, and it was really extraordinary. And it was a combination of being extremely thrilled and grateful and excited to be able to perform that material and be a part of that beautifully crafted show. But when I first joined, I was also terrifying because I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to mess anybody up. I had never been a replacement before. I had never joined a show already running. So that was a new experience. And then on top of that, learning the roles that I need to learn, I just didn't know how I was going to ever do it. I had a lot of moments of just doubting myself and thinking like this, I can't do this. But the team there is so welcoming and helpful and warm, and the entire team, the creative team, the cast, the crew, everybody that works in the building is just so welcoming. So like right away, everyone puts you at ease. You saw there was that picture of everyone like putting hands on the shoulders. Like that's kind of the spirit of what it's like in the theater. And so a lot of that, like, yeah, that's really what it feels like. A lot of that kind of that pressure that, you know, we're all going to put on ourselves is really dissipated by the spirit of family that they foster in it with the show. So,
well, it certainly was. I mean, you say you were worried that it was a mistake, but I had the great fortune of getting to see you play the role, and it was still one of the most thrilling theatrical evenings I've had. I couldn't be prouder. You know, it was really, you're kind of extraordinary in the role, and I think for our community, it's a big deal. You know, so
well, thank you, and thank you for coming. And it's really an honor to be a part of that show, and I'm just so grateful to have been able to play those parts and to share that stage and tell that story, because I really believe in the impact of the show, and it's just extraordinary. So it's really big. I'm really grateful for it.
So just last month, you were part of our month-long Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month celebration at Be Our Guest. You know, how do you think we can continue to create more access to BIPOC artists, young and old? And, you know, what are some of the things, you know, we as a community can do?
Well, I think largely the kinds of things that you're doing at Live and in Theater or Live and in Color are big steps toward that. Creating opportunities for writers of color and performers of color, and I think opportunity is a big one. Is a big way to build the community to build these communities of artists and to give people more experience, and that's what you're doing. And so I think that's the biggest one. You know, when I think of like where I got started, it was just nothing. None of this would have happened for me if people didn't give me opportunities. If people didn't like say, we know you know, you may not even know what stage right and stage left is, but like still come and be part of the show, and we'll show you, we'll teach you. Mm-hmm. And so like that's it's all been because, you know, somebody held out a hand to me and said like, come aboard. So I sort of, you know, I think anytime there's opportunities to tell stories from the perspective of different voices, and to show different faces, and to keep growing and fostering these different communities, and also recognizing how many different kinds of people there are in the world.
Right.
And you know, diversity is a big word because it encompasses so many different kinds of people. So, you know, reflecting all of that in the work, I think is part of how we'll get there.
Well, you know, as you know, our mission at Live in Color is to connect diverse communities to create new stage works. You know, for you, what does having an inclusive working environment mean to you?
I think to me, an inclusive working environment is one where everybody feels like they can fully be themselves and bring everything of who they are to their work and to the table, and that nobody has to feel like they need to change something about themselves or minimize a part of themselves to kind of like fit into a particular environment. I think that true inclusivity is one where everybody can really show up as they are with where they came from and what their background is, and feel safe doing that. That's the way in all of the times that I've worked with you, with Live and in Color, that's always been the case. It's clear that you're working on that, that you're creating these inclusive environments is high on your agenda, because I've always felt that way working with all of you.
Well, thank you. That's the hope. We've been through a lot the past 15 months, and I feel like the world, but speaking specifically about our business, has gone through this reckoning, and there's a lot of talk and a lot of feelings. Coming out of, now that we're reemerging and things are reopening, do you think moving ahead there's going to be a shift? I mean, in terms of producers being more open, new work being created that reflects, just the diversity of the world?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful. I'm certainly hopeful, and I think that there has to be some kind of shift, because there are so many conversations that are being had now, and there are so many things being brought to everyone's attention that it's impossible to ignore. And I think more of these conversations are going to be had, and I'm already seeing and hearing of theaters, kind of rethinking how they approach the work that they do, and really digging in and asking tough questions, and reaching out to communities more. I've been seeing that more in theaters that I've in different theaters around the country, and in even shows here in on Broadway, and so I am hopeful. I do think that we'll see more, and as well in terms of the types of work that we're seeing too. I really am hopeful that there is going to be more voices reflected. I just think that we have been through such a challenging time, and it's been on so many levels, and something that has to come out of it. It's a lot of it has been necessary. A lot of the discussions, I think, about racial justice and awareness have been a long time coming, and I'm glad that they're all being had. And so I just think that a change has to come out of it, and so I'm really hopeful that it will.
Me too. I'm like,
yeah.
Marc, we have a lot of questions today. People want to ask you a lot of stuff. Let's take some.
Okay.
Nizar says, have you had any onstage mishaps? Great stories. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Wow, where to begin? I've definitely fallen on my butt at least twice while playing Hamilton. Actually fallen all the way on my butt.
Slippery shoes, or just from choreography, or from what?
Nerves, I think. That definitely happened. And as far as messing up, I've certainly made lots of mistakes. There's actually one of my favorite stories from Hamilton was when I was playing Hamilton and I messed up a line, or I actually didn't come in. It was the music and different people were saying their lines, and then the music was just going and nobody was saying anything. And that was because it was me, because I was supposed to say something, and I sort of tried to fit it all in at the last second, and of course it didn't make any sense. It just came out as complete gibberish. And then I got off stage and I was mortified, and I just felt like, oh God, this is the worst feeling ever. And Mandy Gonzalez was standing right there, who plays Angelica, and she heard it and she saw it and she's like, she took my arm and she just said, "Welcome to the club." And then we walked to our next entrance together. And that just like was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment.
Well, in that show, there's no place, like there's no breathing room. Like you can't even think. You have to like keep going. So if you miss something, right, you're
yep. If your mind wanders for like a second, you're too late.
I love it. I love it. Let's take another. Daisy says, "Do you have a favorite virtual performance you did this year?" I know you did a lot of them.
Oh wow! I was really fortunate that folks asked me to collaborate with them this year, and boy, that was a really incredible learning experience to go from performing on stage to kind of figuring out how to do these virtual performances. And there's such amazing stuff that's come out of it. It's really amazing. I mean the duet that I got to do with Shoba for you guys was one of my favorites because it is such a gorgeous arrangement of by Yan Lee of Children Will Listen and You've Got to Be Carefully Taught.
Yeah.
And so I loved that because it was a chance to learn something new, learn a new piece of music and perform it with an amazing performers as Shoba is, and also the message of the song too, and what it was, and how it was part of that episode of Be Our Guest that during Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month that was specifically talking about the issues of hate against the API community. So that just had a lot of meaning for me on a lot of different levels.
Well, for a lot of people it was. And if anyone wants to check it out, it's on YouTube and on our social media. So it really was gorgeous. I mean, you and Shoba sound incredible together, and it really, can't say enough about it. So thank you for doing it.
Oh, thank you for asking.
I think we have a couple more. Emma says, "What do you think auditions will look like post-pandemic?" Great question.
Ooh, that's a great question. I wonder what you think too, Dev, about this.
I think like people have gotten used to the virtual thing. In my mind, I don't think open calls will ever happen again.
Right.
Where there's these huge mass auditions with like 300 people because you can just see everyone on this. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a lot of virtual auditions are here to stay. I think there's just going to be continuing to be more of that because a lot of folks have kind of learned the ropes or have had to learn the ropes of auditioning on camera or doing self-tapes and things like that. And so I feel like that'll be here to stay. But I hope that there will still be some in-person audition. There's just so much to be gleaned from actually being in a room with somebody.
Absolutely. It's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah. So we'll see. It'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah. Let's take one last question. Iman says, "Is there anything you miss about being a swing?"
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I do think that one thing I miss is like, there is a real kind of family within the swing community of a show that I found that being a swing is such a unique experience when you're part of a show, and it's something that only the other swings can do. The idea that you have to know all these parts. They just have to be in your head, and you just have to be ready to go on at any moment. It could be in the middle of a show sometime too. So it's just this very unique experience that it kind of bonds everybody who's swinging in a show. So I don't know if you've experienced this too, but so I think that sort of like closeness, that sort of bond.
I don't know that swing trauma, I call it, the terror of being a swing.
Right.
Together.
Yeah, right. The terror. Right. It's an instant bonding.
But anyway, Marc, we are out of time. This has been incredible. But before we go, as we mentioned earlier, all donations made during this month will be matched dollar for dollar up to $10,000. Please make a tax-deductible donation today to support the work of our artists at Live It in Color by going to liveitIncolor.org right now. All money raised goes to supporting our amazing artists and developing their incredible work. Next week, join us when we chat with Orville Mendoza from Broadway's Peter and the Starcatchers and Pacific Overtures, as well as Brian Myers Cooper from Miss Saigon and the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and the creator of Off-Broadway's Sonnet Play, dear friends of mine and brilliant talents who are hilarious and wonderful. To see more episodes of Be Our Guest, please make sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. And Marc, I am your biggest fan. I just, I thank you for all you've given to Live It in Color this past year. You were just like our biggest supporter, and I just so appreciate it. And
I'm your biggest fan as well, and thank you so much for having me today, and for inviting me to come and perform with you. I always appreciate and always love performing with you and being a part of the family. So thank you.
Well, hopefully we can do it again in person very soon. And as we say goodbye, would you mind leading us a little toast before we go?
Sure. To continuing to create art and spread love and joy in this new world that we are coming into.
Hear, hear. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.
Time to change the story. Come on and change this tune. See how the future looks bright.